Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's video is about a simple but powerful skill, looking ahead in your music while practicing the piano. A viewer who I'll call E recently wrote to me, a couple of years ago in one of your videos, you talked about looking ahead as we play. I've recently started trying to be more intentional about this, and it does seem to be making a difference. Perhaps you could do a video about this with some suggestions. I thought that was a great idea, so here we are. If you've ever struggled with hesitations or felt like you're constantly behind in the music, today's lesson should help. I'll explain what looking ahead is and why it matters, and I'll talk you through how to practice looking ahead. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. First, let's talk about what looking ahead in the music means and why it matters. Looking ahead in piano playing means anticipating what's coming next, both visually and mentally. Instead of keeping your eyes glued to the notes you're currently playing, you're constantly scanning ahead to prepare for the next note, phrase, chord, or hand position shift. This also applies mentally. You're not just reacting to the current moment, but thinking ahead in the music about what you're about to say musically. So why does this matter? Well, first of all, it reduces hesitations. When you're looking ahead, your hands are moving into the next position earlier, which helps you play more smoothly. Imagine trying to read a sentence out loud by staring at just one word or syllable at a time without glancing ahead. You would have to constantly pause, and the text you're reading would lose all sense of meaning for you. The same thing happens in piano playing if you're not looking ahead. Secondly, looking ahead improves your overall confidence. You'll feel more in control knowing that you're prepared for what's next. This is especially helpful in tricky passages where you might otherwise get a little bit panicky or maybe even stumble. Finally, looking ahead helps you develop a sense of flow. You'll transition seamlessly between notes and phrases and even sections of the piece, making your playing sound more polished and musical. Looking ahead is a small habit with a big impact, and later on in this video, I'm going to show you how to start integrating it into your practice. Looking ahead isn't just about knowing what notes are coming. It will also help improve your technique at the piano. Think of it like driving a car. When you're driving a car, you don't just focus on the road immediately in front of you. You're constantly scanning ahead to see what direction the road is going, and then you adjust as you drive by turning the steering wheel before the car actually has to make the turn. Now, this helps you drive smoothly and avoid sudden jerky movements where you're reacting to everything at the last minute. The same principle applies to the piano. Looking ahead prepares your hands for the next physical movement the music requires. When you anticipate what's coming, your arm and fingers can start moving into position earlier, making sure that you are where you need to be in time. If you only focus on the current notes, your hands are constantly playing catch up, and this often leads to rushed movements or missing notes. So just like driving without looking ahead, if you play without looking ahead, you'll feel tense and reactive. But when you know what's coming up because you've been scanning the music ahead of where you're playing, you can move with physical ease and avoid unnecessary tension. Your playing becomes more fluid and you feel much more in control, even in tricky passages. Just by the simple act of learning to look ahead, you'll be able to level up your technique because you won't be grabbing for notes at the last minute. Now, looking ahead doesn't just improve your technique. It also elevates your musicality. And just to clarify, when I'm saying looking ahead, I'm talking about scanning ahead in the music, not staring down at your hands as you play. Keeping your focus on the score and looking ahead allows you to anticipate and shape phrases more naturally, creating smoother connections between the notes and achieving that beautiful, singing, long line that we all strive for at the piano. Looking ahead also helps you prepare for changes in dynamics and make more accuracy in your articulations. Without anticipating it musically, your dynamics can have a tendency to happen too late or not at all because the music is going by before you have the chance to process all of the details in the score. You're actually thinking ahead all the time when you speak. When we talk, we don't just think about one word at a time. We have a full thought or idea that we want to communicate, and that thought exists in some way in our brain, even as we're uttering the words that communicate the thought. We don't just say one word and then react to that, and then think of the next word we want to say and then react to that. We have a thought in our head, and that takes place before or as we're speaking it, and then that thought comes out in a smooth, coherent string of words. By looking ahead in the music, you can start to experience the music on a larger scale, seeing each note and musical gesture you're playing as part of a longer line, just like each word and phrase that we speak when we're talking is part of a larger thought. By the way, if you're enjoying this lesson and you want more of my content delivered straight to your inbox, be sure to sign up for my newsletter, Notes from the Piano Prof. It has weekly practice strategies, resources, behind the scenes info, and more. It's completely free, and if you change your mind, you can unsubscribe at any time with no strings attached. Now let's talk about how to start practicing looking ahead. The first step to getting comfortable with looking ahead is to consciously train your eyes to move ahead of where you're currently playing in the music. This might feel unnatural at first, but with practice, it'll become second nature. For example, when I play the piano, my eyes are always anywhere from a beat to a measure or more ahead of where my hands are playing. You can learn how to do this too. Start by choosing something short, something simple, maybe just a short passage, and play it while consciously guiding your eyes to the next beat and tracking ahead as you play. The goal is to stay one beat or so ahead of your hands. Something to be aware of is consciously looking past the bar lines. The vertical line of a bar line can act as a visual barrier, which keeps our eyes from tracking past it into the next bar before we've played all the notes in the current bar. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to get stuck in one bar and then not be able to visually look ahead into the next bar. So practice looking past the bar line. You need to make it a point to move your eyes past that bar line into the next measure as you play. Also, you can train your eyes to jump ahead to the next line when you're near the end of the current one. This is a common place that a lot of piano students hesitate because they get to the end of the line and then their eyes stop. Then their playing catches up to their eyes and then they look down at the next line. Instead of that, intentionally practice tracking your eyes ahead to the next line. And so that means you're going to be playing the end of one line while your eyes are starting to track ahead to the next line. By intentionally practicing tracking your eyes ahead of where you're playing in the music, you'll be taking the first steps toward being able to play more smoothly by seeing what's coming up in the music. A key aspect of looking ahead in the music is learning to prioritize what your eyes focus on. Not every detail in the music needs constant, vigilant attention. A lot of music is written in patterns, and once we internalize one of them, we don't need to keep staring at the same pattern over and over. For example, if you're playing a piece with a recurring Alberti bass pattern in the left hand, there's no need to track every note of that pattern once you've set your hand up and started playing it. Instead, shift your focus ahead to more important things in the music, like upcoming chord changes or technical challenges that are coming up in the right hand. Also, you can skip over rests with your eyes, but this is very important. You have to still keep the pulse going. Don't just skip the rests. Skip the rests and still count. Just because you're not visually tracking the beats in real time doesn't mean they don't exist. Always maintain an internal sense of the pulse, making sure that you feel the rest even if your eyes are already looking ahead. Looking ahead is about identifying what is the same in the music and what is about to change in the music. Train your eyes to look and scan for upcoming accidentals, unusual rhythms, or shifts and patterns that could catch you off guard. These are the elements that often trip us up. So by scanning ahead for anything out of the ordinary, you'll be much better prepared to handle them smoothly once you get to that point in the music. Now let's talk about scanning groups and patterns and not just looking at individual notes. To truly master the art of looking ahead as you play the piano, you really need to start to learn to shift your focus from individual notes to larger groups and patterns. Think of it like reading words instead of just individual letters. When you read, you don't process each letter one by one. You recognize whole words or even phrases at a glance. In fact, once you've read a common word over and over, over, you don't even have to mentally sound it out in your head anymore. Your brain can identify that entire word shape as one word and immediately know what it means. The same principle applies to piano playing because instead of reading every single note, you will have trained your eyes to identify intervals and chords as familiar shapes on the page. For example, if you see a cluster of notes that forms a triad, instead of looking at 3 individual notes and figuring out what they are, start recognizing it as a chord. And when you're playing scales and arpeggios, your eyes should be able to see the entire pattern and register its shape and not have to pick out each individual pitch. This allows your brain to chunk the information together and process it faster and therefore give information to your hands so they move with more ease into place ahead of the time when you actually need to play the note. One helpful way to practice this is to look at sections of your music and group notes into patterns or chunks by circling them or drawing brackets around them. Over time, you'll start to recognize these patterns instinctively, just as you do with words while reading. Learning to process music in chunks will help you play with a lot more ease and fluidity, and it'll help free up mental energy to focus on expression and musicality. It's all about learning to see the bigger picture. So that's 3 ways to practice looking ahead. Now, what were those 3 ways again? The first was to train your eyes to look ahead. The second was to focus on patterns and skip what you don't need. And the third was to teach yourself to scan groups and patterns, not individual notes. One of the best ways to reinforce your ability to look ahead in the music is through getting comfortable playing the piano without constantly looking down at your hands to find your place on the keyboard. If you want to dive deeper into how to keep your eyes on the music, go ahead and click the link to that video right up there in the corner. If you like this video, please be sure to like it, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with someone who might find it helpful. It really does help me reach more people. I'll see you in the next video. Happy practicing!